Good morning, Fundamentals of Art students. Today's topic is color theory, and I'm hopefully going to show you the examples of what you need to know so you're successful with painting. Over to my right here by my hand, I got a color palette, and traditionally we learn that white and black are neutral colors, not a big deal, but they work well with everything because they're neutral. You can wear something that's orange and black works with it because it's our school colors, etc. So they're always called neutral colors. But the color wheel we have our warm colors, which are yellow, orange, and red, and then we have our cooler colors, which are purple, blue, and green. When you're in kindergarten, you start learning how to use colors. You have a color wheel set like this here. It's good to know those colors. They're called primary colors. That would be your yellow, your red, and your blue. Secondary colors are your in-between colors. You mix these two, you get an orange. You mix these two colors, or you actually mix these two colors right over here to get purple, or actually these two to get purple, etc. Green would be yellow and blue together, and you end up getting green. We know those, but they're really not that important for painting. But there are some things that really are important for painting. So down over here on your slip of paper, I send you this file. You have complementary colors. Now we're into the bread and butter of painting and why this is important. So back in the Renaissance time, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci were experimenting with colors, and they had a big palette, big wood palette like this here, and they were mixing their colors, and after a while their hand would get tired from holding the palette, and colors would start mixing. So you start realizing that colors start working really well together. The second thing is that they understand how light enters the eye and how we perceive color. So they did a bunch of experiments and they found out color sets that work really good together. So they're opposite of the color wheel. So let's take a look at red and green. This is typically our Christmas colors. They are opposite on the color wheel. Okay? So the definition of what they found out is that red looks its best right next to green. So well, even today we use this because Mountain Dew uses it, and many colors, we still use it for Christmas colors, etc. These two colors look great next to each other. So we continue doing that. If you take a look at, I'll give you this example right over here. This is a student artwork right here. This is a predominantly red and warm colored painting, but we have green in the background. So those two colors complement each other. So you want red to look its brightest, you have to have green by it. If you want green to look its brightest, you have to have red next to it. Okay, let's continue looking at that. Other colors, the Minnesota Vikings are blue and purple, or blue and yellow, sorry about that. So then you have yellow to add to your purple. They look its best right next to each other. So those two colors are complementary. Blue and orange, Denver Broncos, Syracuse, Florida Gators, etc. Here's orange next to blue. And so the Renaissance artists for years would deal with, if you look at any old painting, you go to the Louvre in Paris, France, any museum, for about 300 years, the Renaissance artists loved the color theory. If you did something that was red, you guarantee you that the background was green. If something was green, you can guarantee you that something was red in the background. Was it a pure red? Not necessarily, but it was maybe a darker red or a lighter red. But they love this, and this is really important to use this in your painting techniques. So beyond that, now, they found out by doing that, by mixing them next to each other, and again, they had that palette here, they found out a very important thing. For many years, they were just using black right here to darken their colors. We don't do that anymore. Don't think of black of darkening any colors. Use your complementary color. So say, for example, if I want red darker, I'm going to take red over here. Here's my pure red. If I want to make it lighter, I would think about using white, but I don't because it'd make pink. We'll talk about how to change that later. But if I want to make red a little bit darker, I take just a little tiny drop of green and I add it to this. Now I've got a really nice dark red. This is when you start shading, because we need to shade all of our projects because we talked about that in drawing. So relate to drawing is just painting with a brush, and now you're adding color. So it's important to know how to shade. So if I want to make something lighter, I typically use white, except for red. We'll talk about that. But if I want to make yellow lighter, I add white. If I want to make orange lighter, I add white to it. Any of these other colors here, if I want them lighter, I add white to them. But now the spectrum, we need to know how to make things darker. So any of these colors right here, if I want to make blue darker, I'll take my blue, lay that down here, I'll add a little tiny drop of its complement, orange. Not equal amounts, just a little tiny bit of it on your brush. And you'll make a nice dark blue. Okay, so we have to understand that that's what our goal is when we start painting, is we need to shade our objects, but we need to know how to use colors. So this went on for about 300 years, and everyone loved it, it worked, etc. But the introduction of the camera changed everything. In the 1800s, everything was, if you wanted something documented, your family, friends, buildings, events, artists were doing it. They had to paint it, etc., and they were telling the story of our history. Well, the camera was something new, just like our phone, which I'm using right now or here. Whenever we get a new latest phone, everyone's the buzz. It's, hey, we like this, we want to have this. So the Renaissance artists had to change. So what happens is that they were no longer, in a sense, there was a little lull there where the camera and the introduction of the photograph, everyone could have their picture taken. It was a lot cheaper, 5 cents, 10 cents, whatever. You get your family picture taken versus spending maybe $20 is to have an artist paint your project. Okay, so it wasn't feasible. So, and then plus it was popular. So the art world had a little struggle there for a little while. So what happened was the Impressionist artists thought, okay, let's change a few things. Let's change our style. And so they came up, and Vincent van Gogh, take a look at here, a picture of him, and this is a painting that a student done here in class. Changed the technique, the style. It's a really heavy paint, lots of dabs, lots of colors. Look at this, predominantly this blue background. We look at it from a distance, think of it as like a TV. You see just blue. But if you look up close to it, there's a lot of green in it. So let's talk about why they did those colors and why they did the technique. So they had to do something different. They were trying to have a new market, and they were successful at it. But they also changed color theory. Colors are getting better, etc. So what happens, these little tiny dots right here, they use adjacent colors. So on the color wheel, we have complementary colors. And that's what we talked about, opposite, right? Okay, anything's opposite of each other. Now adjacent colors, they are good choices to use. Adjacent colors are adding to your palette. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So let's take a look at John Deere or Green Bay Packers. Yellow, that's not a very good yellow, sorry, I'll clean out my brush. I'm just using water over here. A pure yellow, normally you would have purple by it, right? Because it's complementary colors. Well, they said green looks great right next to it. Okay, we got John Deere colors, Green Bay Packers, they look good right next to each other. Mountain Dew uses the kind of yellow with the yellowish green, etc. They also look good for mixing. So if I want to make my green, if I want to make my yellow a little bit darker or change my yellow, I have a couple options. Here, I'll see I got a little bit of yellow in my green. That works good. I can also know that adjacent colors, it means next to on a color wheel. Yellow colors that, it's also an orange. So yellow and orange are adjacent colors. So now I got a yellow-green if I want to change for shading yellow, or I got an orange-yellow, which works good. They are next to on the color wheel. So typically what's next to orange would be red. What's next, so adjacent colors of orange are, if I want to lighten orange, I can add yellow to it. If I want to darken orange, I can add red to it. Besides, I can always use blue to darken it. So now we have more options to change. If we want to lighten any of these colors, go back to white right over here, okay? But red is tricky with white because it turns pink. So actually I use its adjacent color. I use orange to make my red lighter. Now I can add a little bit of white to it, and now I can get kind of a better red. It'll lighten the red because it has orange in it. It doesn't turn pink, etc. So adjacent colors are the second part of this. We have our complementary colors right over here on our list. And then as we go down, we have adjacent colors that we focus on. So those are two things that I want you to consider when you start painting. I want you to use more colors. So as we paint something, doesn't matter what it is. Let's say for example, you take a red apple. If I take this red apple and I'm going to just go ahead and draw this out right over here. I'll go over here and I'll just go right over here. If I want to do a red apple, here's my solid red. And most of us would just go red and just do a light red. I go now to orange and red. To lighten it. And then if I want to add a little highlight to it, because we're shading it, right? I add a little bit of highlight right there. I'm going to blend it. So this is a painting technique. I'll talk about what to do with brushes here in a little bit. There's my highlight. Now it's dark. But I want to darken the red. I'm trying to shade this. I can use green. Okay, I'll go over here. I can make a darker red with my green. There's a nice dark red right there. Oh, I like that. And then we have, or we can use purple to darken it, right? Because it's an adjacent color. Whichever one you decide that you want to use, that's why we got to experiment, all right? I go over here and I'm going to darken my red because I'm shading this, just like we did in fundamentals of art in terms of drawing. So I'm shading my apple light to dark. Now, if any point that I want to change, like I got a little too dark on the bottom here, I just take a little bit of fresh red and go over that and blend this. There's my apple. Now I'm shading it light to dark using color. And that's what makes fun. I think that's the most fun part of painting, is that you can shade using colors. You know, I have a drop shadow. I might take this darker shadow right over here. I might make this a really dark red. Depends on what surface it's on. And if I wanted to do color theory, I'd actually use green in the background. Now, can I use the straight green? You bet. Do I want to change the green? I might actually use a little yellow green. Add a little yellow in my green here, just lighten it a little bit. I actually gotta add a little white to it because I can. I'm just gonna use a light, kind of a lime light green like this here. Now I overloaded my brush. Don't go over past your brush. We'll talk about how to use your brush here in a little bit. So in this were the case, I would actually start doing this and taking my green and going all the way around my object. So notice how that nice green, how it makes that red pop? It's its complementary color. And since this is a green background, I actually going to change my shadow. Now I go around doing this all, I go over here and actually make a really dark green shadow. So now I'm actually going to use my red to darken the green, and I'm going to make this a dark green shadow. There, I like that better. Now let's get a little, straighten this out a little bit right here. Here's my shadow. Okay, color theory right there. Reason why we don't use black is black has a mixture of many colors. Black over here, if you look down here, black, you want to call the rule, it's called the rule of 4. You don't want to mix too many colors together. Black's got many colors right here. So if you use black and red to darken, yes, it'll darken the red, but it gets kind of it just doesn't look good. So just kind of think about black on very rare occasions, on a night scene or something real specific, but I use black probably 5% of the time. I'll mix blacks. I'll mix my colors to match up with that a little bit. Okay, let's talk about, that's color theory. Understand that. I need this in your paintings, okay? Now, let's take a look at painting techniques. Here are our brushes, and I got a whole list of them right here. I'm cleaning out my brush right over here, and I'm going back. I'll bring my water over here so you can see a little bit what I'm doing. I got many different brushes here. I have a detailed brush right here in red. I have a flat brush right here, okay? And I have a couple of these. This is a brand new flat brush, and this is an older flat brush right here. It's been beat up a little bit. Hey, we got a purpose for those. Don't throw those away. They're great for blending and they're great for techniques. So here's all my paint brushes. Number one goal I can tell you about paint brushes, and when you're done with them, I'm gonna put some in the water right here. I'm gonna clean it out. You go like this here, is setting the brush. See this crimp right here? Take your finger and go like this here. I reset my brush so it's flat. Okay, as flat as you can. On a round brush like this here, or a detailed brush, I go like this here and I pinch it. And I run it between my fingers when it's wet. And that's reset the brushes. So when you're done every day, you reset your brushes and set them down so they dry. Don't leave paint in your brushes, it ruins them. Okay, second thing I can tell you about painting is when you take your brush, this is a good example. You don't want to have this where you have a whole bunch of paint all over your brush. What you really want to do, is make sure that you load up your brush just a little bit. So if I take a look at my bristle, I only want to go about that much paint. Multiple reasons. If you overload your brush with too much paint, what happens is that it goes like this. It expands, you lose control of the paint. So whenever I grab paint, I'll grab a bright color so you can see that a little bit better. I only grab a little bit. And watch what I do here. I typically will lay this on a piece of paper and I go like this. Because I don't want to have too much paint on my brush, because if you put too much paint down, you lose control and then pretty soon you got a mess on your hands. Over here I got a list, and I send this to you as a text, or not text, but as a attachment. I have blending. So the very first easy thing for you to learn how to do is take your brush like this here. I'm gonna go right here. Here's my yellow. And then what I'm doing right here is, watch what I'm doing. I just take this, I go on a paper towel. Look at my paper towel. It's got all kinds of marks in it. All I'm doing is cleaning out my brush. I don't go back to the water. I'm gonna actually use, I'll use orange, which is an adjacent color. I'm gonna load that up and I go right next to it. I get real close. This is a technique, believe it or not, right here. It's called dry brushing. I still have a little bit of on there, but it's pretty dry. And all I do is I take these two, blend and dry brush, because I want to clean out my brush. I keep blending, dry brush and blend. That's how you blend two colors together. It's blending and dry brushing. So you're actually using two techniques. Dry brushing is down over here too. You really don't demonstrate that, but you use it, okay? So understand that. Wet and wet. Let's just say I'm taking red paint and I'm painting right here. And I think, yeah, you know, I want that lighter. I'm just gonna take orange. I don't even bother dry brushing. I'm gonna take orange and start lightening it. So I'm going wet paint right on top of wet paint and I'm blending. So what I'm doing here is I'm making this a lot lighter. Okay, I can do the opposite too. Now I'll dry brush. But I'm gonna take my purple because I wanna make it a little bit darker. I dry brush here and I just go wet on top. Wet paint top of wet paint. I'm shading right now. But I try not, notice I haven't gone to my water yet. I only do that if I know I'm going to a light color or I really want to have my brush clean for all new slate. So it's usually when I deal with white or yellow, I got to clean it out. If you've got a purple in your brush and you want a pure yellow, it's going to darken it. You don't want to do that. Next painting technique is called scraping out. It's pretty simple. Let's take a look at, brown is actually blue and orange, which are complementary colors, but equal amounts. You get kind of a rusty brown. Okay, so if you paint anything brown, I use blue to darken it, orange to lighten it. If I take my brown, I'm doing like this here, I immediately take the back of my brush and scratch it. So it's a scraping out. So I'm just kind of scratching, you know, that type of thing. You use it for textures, not often, but enough. Wiping out is just in case if you have a mistake and you don't like it, you can actually take this and wipe some of your paint away. It gets lighter, etc. Use it sparingly, not often. Scumbling, which is lifting and stomping, just think of that's the main term, but these are really important. So lifting, I take my old beat up brush right over here, okay? And I'm gonna make a texture, and I think leaves are a really common texture. I got my dark green here, which is made up of red and green. I take it and I just hit the fingertips. Just think of just the fingertips. I got a little paint on here, but just think of the fingertips of this. You get a little bit of paint on here. See that? Just a little bit of paint, and all I do is go like this here. I stomp. This is stomping right here. Okay, same technique, like this here, lifting for grass. That's my darker green. I always start with darker green first. Now, I'm gonna take my pure green. And I got a little too much paint on here right now, so I just go over to my extra. I go like this here and I get a little bit of it off of there because what I want is just a little bit on the tip, just like it's showing right here. So what I do is I take that pure green and I go right on top. Now I'm doing wet on wet. I just lightly tap this. So I get a nice texture there. And then I do the same thing here. I just lift the fresh green right on top of it. So I go dark green, medium green, which is regular green, and I'm gonna go yellow green. Why? Because I'm shading this. The more colors you use, the more effective your projects will look. So I take a look here. I'm adding my yellow to my green, and I got that on here, and I watch what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna lightly tap it. And sometimes I'll just use pure yellow right on top. A little too much, but I'll come back. And that's stomping. See how nice, it makes it look a lot better than using the straight green. Okay? Grass, same thing. I'm doing some lighter green, so I'll get this up so you can see this a little bit better. It makes a much better product by using multiple colors. Same technique, lifting and stomping. Just think of tapping it like this here and lifting with your brush. Okay? Takes a little practice, but you'll get it, and the effects are amazing. Now, sometimes on something real close like a tree, I will purposely take a detail brush and make my leaves. See how I go like this here, it's tiny little dots? And that works, it takes a little while. I wouldn't do that on a whole forest and a lot of trees, but something up close, I will do that. So I'll mix my colors and I'll do that. Same thing with grass. But the problem with grass with a detail brush, it takes forever to do this. But sometimes you need to make different colors and you need a detail, then I go over there. I kind of like this one better. Not one is better than the other. But just think of back in the day, if I ask, if you hadn't had any experience, you just take green and you just go like this, okay? And it's not effective. It doesn't give the end result. It's a blob of green. Why not do it right and use color theory as well as proper painting techniques? I think you understand that. Now, other things that we have to do, like when I just got done completing with the apple, a hard edge. So I take my paintbrush and just do this. So I'll go back to that apple technique or drawing the apple. If I know it's a nice hard edge, I just lightly put a little bit of paint on. Remember, just load it up a little bit. Rest my hand and hold on to the paintbrush just like you do your pencil, right about here, and try to keep it as clean as possible. You know, you got that. But all this, the long handle there is to help balance. Okay, so I go over here and this is a hard edge. I want to get something real crisp and a crisp edge. I just use my paintbrush and I use this. People always say, well, I don't use my detail brush much. I use less flat brushes, etc. If I want a soft edge, I'm gonna go back to like a sky. I'm gonna go back to this right over here. I use an old beat up brush and the soft edge right here, I go like this here. I dry brush, add a little bit of white. It's kind of a blending as well as, but I want my edges softer. So I blend a little bit and then here's my edge. I just kind of go over here and I make my edges softer. Clouds, things in the background, etc. You want to blend and make those softer. So that's blending. So you have all the techniques. Blending. Blending was up over here. Wet and wet, I just took wet paint, top of wet paint. Scraping out, just take some paint and then take the back of your brush, scrape it out. Wiping out, just in case you need to, if you don't like it, wipe it away real quickly. Works good for boards, etc. Oil paint. Use a little bit, but not often. Scumbling, or in this case, lifting and stomping. We got that by stomping, lifting, makes great texture effects. Hard edge, things up close, that type of thing. Soft edge, you blend your edges, that type of thing. And dry brushing, we know just by cleaning out your brush. So you'll see, this is my paper towels. They're just full of, you know, because I don't want to overload my paintbrush. And you'll see how I did things over here. Your goal is to keep it clean. Most of the time painting gets its bad name because you get it all over your hands. And I got a little bit over my hands here because I'm kind of doing this fairly quickly. But immediately take and wash your hands off, get things clean, and painting's a lot of fun. So this is tempera paint that I'm using. I will have a palette like this sitting in the front of the commons there, unless you have acrylic paint at home. Let me know. Just send me a message, say, hey, Hartung, I need this. So I'll get you that information, that type of thing. Okay, lastly, I want you to make a sheet up like this here and then send me a picture of it, and I'll show you, and I'll actually do that on the same thing here. Just give me a quick second. I'm gonna grab a pencil. And we're gonna draw a little scene. We're gonna put this all together, okay? So on your paper right here, just make like a little quarter box like this here. What we're gonna do is make a little fence post. And we're just gonna have a little horizon line right here. So now watch how I do this. And this is just putting this all together so you understand what I'm doing. I'm gonna first take my blue, and blue, when you start doing skies, this is too bright right over here. It's way too bright. I'm gonna slide this over here a little bit. This blue is way too bright for the sky. And typically we would start with that, we don't wanna do that. So I'm gonna add white. I'm gonna come over here to my piece of paper, scrap. I'm gonna get the blue I want, which is right about here. Now, watch what I'm gonna do here. This is blending. I'm gonna go really fast. I'm gonna go down about a third of the way down, and I'm gonna cover up my fence post. You're like, well, why would I do that? Just watch. I'm gonna take white, and just let me finish this. I'm gonna keep blending, okay? Blend really fast. And you notice my edges, I'm not worried about it. Just get down there, all the way down to the bottom. I'm gonna go to an off-white. I'm gonna keep going all the way down. There it is. Now my back strokes like this here, come back like this here. Get a little more blue. There it is. I'm just going wet paint on top of wet paint, and I'm blending. There, I like that. Nice blue, gradual change, blending sky. You can't do this, if you did, everyone just did a solid blue, If I ask kids to do this, it's like this is the whole thing, all solid blue all the way down. And it's just too dark. We don't have skies like this here. We have lighter white. So I'm doing gradual change, going down, blending to a white. But I typically will take my blue, add white to it, come over here, get to the blue that I want right here, then start the process. Then I know go from white all the way down. I normally let this dry, but I want to get this video going a little bit here. So I clean out my brush. Why? Because I just want to get rid of the blue that it's on here. Remember I said earlier, orange and blue make equal amounts, make up your brown. So any brown you ever use, add blue to darken it, add orange to lighten it. I can faintly see where my my fence post is, so I'm just go right on top of it. And you paint in this order. You paint in the order that you see. You paint for what's first in the background, you work your way forward. So you got your blue, I got my brown here, and I'm going right on top of this. I typically let it dry. If you're at home, let this dry first. But I'm doing it just to speed up the video here a little bit. Clean off my brush a little bit, get some more fresh brown. I kind of let that dry a little bit there. But I want one side of it to be darker, because I'm shading it, right? Everything three-dimensional should be shaded. I'm just going to sneak a little bit of blue in here to shade the darkness. I got my paintbrush a little bit there. And I'm kind of stomping a little bit because fence posts, especially the wood ones, typically are kind of rough. Add my brown. I'll come back to that, I think. I'm going to let this dry. It's kind of hard sometimes to get, maybe I'll just, there, that's better. I'm going to take my detail brush because I want that top to be a little more, there, I like that better. And I'll take my detail brush and add a little bit of my blues on the edge there. I think my paint brushes, there, I like, oh yeah, there. That we can live with. I just kind of stomp a little bit. And I'm adding a little bit of white over here because I want to lighten it up on top. Ah, yes, much better. Okay, there's my fence post, a little bit of texture, etc. Now let's take that old beat up brush. We're going to add the grass. So remember we talked about the red and green? We go over here and we're going to make this a little bit darker green. It's kind of like this top. And remember, don't overload your paintbrush. If it's too much on the paintbrush, go over here. I'll dab it a little bit first on practice on a scrap piece, okay, before you jump to your painting. So I go over here, and this is my painting here. I'm just going to go over here and start lifting. And I'm going to do two different types of grass. I'm going to do summer grass and winter grass. So you get a little bit of a feel of what I got going on here. I'm just going to lift over here. So I got that really dark green going on here, right? I'm going to let that dry a little bit. I'm going to come over here and get yellow, and a little bit of orange and a little bit of brown, because in fall, the grass, it's got a lot of brown in it. And I come over here and I remember I tap it. Oh yeah, I like that. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take my rusty brown and go over this. And I'm going to go right over the fence post. Why? Because the grass is below. And I'm going to go right into my sky. Now try imagine doing the sky here with, you can't do the grass and sky on top. It doesn't work. Your edges are much better when you do this. Now, clean off my brush. Not too much, just dry brush a little bit. Now I'm going to come back over here with some yellow and some straight green. I'm going to go right on top of it. Oh yeah, perfect. Take a little bit too much paint. And it's actually blending. And I kind of keep my strokes different directions.
Jeff Dravis, could you please come
and I'm actually add a little more yellow. And it's wet paint on top of wet paint. A little straight green. There you go. I got mixtures. I like that. Okay. Over here, since it's fall, we lose all that green. It gets just kind of a brown, earth tone brown. So I'm just going to start. I'm going to sneak in my yellow and a little bit of white, and I'm going to see what it looks like over here. It's kind of a yellow, yeah, I like that. A little bit more white. And remember, don't overload your brush. Come over here and I'm going to sneak that yellowish color, and it's going to blend. It's going to purposely blend with the browns that are there. And I'll kind of come back with a little bit of brown in there. There. So now I got a fence post, a little landscape, easy to do, practicing everything that you learned up over here. Now, just to end this, bob wire, like, you know, we got a fence post, we got to have wire on it. Typically, we would say, go grab this right here, the detail brush. Problem with that is you're going to get that bob wire. I'll actually use black, but the bob wire, if you do this wire, it's too thick. It looks like a cable. So what do? Use a pencil. Okay, so watch what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to go like this here. Draw some couple little fence line just using my pencil. Just like that. Don't overdo those lines. So your goal today is you're going to do this right here. Next week I'm going to post a video on how to draw your pop can and paint it, and we'll go from there. So learn color theory. Understand the sheet right here. It's important to understand complementary colors and adjacent colors. This sheet right here is the painting techniques, both these things here. Painting is fun. It's one of my favorite art process, and geez, you know, I wish you were here. I could show you more, walk around, help you with this, but I think I did a good enough job with this, and we'll go from there. Thanks.